Lira preferred the quiet hours of Crelia 9. The dorm lights were dimmed to mimic night, but the windows betrayed the truth. Beyond the reinforced glass, the moon never truly slept. Not on Crelia 9, where the deserts exhaled charged grains into the air like sparks from invisible bonfires. It was the first week of term at the Heraxar Dominion Military Sciences Academy, an institution carved into the ribs of hollow mesa, its silhouette sharp enough to slice the horizon. Crelia 9, Heraxar Dominion Military Sciences Academy. New cadets were sorted by origin and tolerance scores. Species from cushioned worlds filled the upper ranks almost by default. The intake of humans from Earth was an anomaly negotiated under the Helios-Heraxar Cooperation Pact, a treaty meant to provide knowledge exchange, but treated by many Dominion staff as paperwork rather than a promise. The induction week required environmental conditioning. Most students wore atmospheric filters. Some needed exoskeletal pressure rigs, just to walk the outer yards without panic. Lyra's pack had nothing but her class tablet, a woven scarf she rarely used, and the faint hum of her gravity core implant regulating itself with the same reliability as her pulse. Each step she took was measured not by effort, but by awareness. Sand trails shifted underfoot, always seeking the slightest imbalance. She entered the cafeteria at 0600. It was too early for instructors, but prime time for posturing. The hall sprawled wide like an aircraft hangar. Metal benches, alloy tables, thrummed faintly under micro-oscillations in gravity. Noise gathered in corners, clawed forks clinking, early sparring debates, territorial clicks from multiple alien dialects. At table cluster 7, 3 Heraxar youths occupied more space than they physically needed. They were finishing nutrient slabs and surveying the hall, like young kings, sizing up a court they hadn't yet earned. One of them, Sarek, leaned back, tail sweeping in slow strokes across the floor tiles. His scales bore emerald polish, cosmetic but deliberate. Rank beginnings were always decorative. Juno Callahan, 18, Lyra's classmate from Earth, waved her over. Her brown jacket had traces of storm dust on the shoulders. Lira sat without answering the gesture. She didn't need to. The bench stiffened under her, mass adjusting to her implant, correcting balance before the world tried to claim confusion. Juno slid a pouch toward her. "Bitter calf?" she asked. "Tastes like victory and structural integrity. You'll love it." Lira opened the pouch. The scent was grounding, dark, roasted, faintly acrid. It felt like a remnant of civilization, rather than synthetics engineered to behave like coffee. "Smells honest," she said. "That's how you praise food?" Juno smirked. "Not smooth. Honest." "It's efficient description," Lira replied. From across the aisle, Sarek noticed her voice, brief, low, carrying no tremor. One of his companions whispered, but not quietly enough. "Earthskin. Scrawny," murmured Dralthus. "Quad limbs, no claws, 0 intimidation features," added Koriv. "Breathe softer," said Sarek. "Predators key in on noise." Lira looked toward them, eyes steady. No threat, no bravado, just observation. The pause unsettled Dralthus more than a glare would. "Sitting calm doesn't rewrite biology," he said louder, sailing the comment like a spear. "A glass wall doesn't make your world dangerous." Sarek raised a hand. "Let it go. We're not here to insult treaties." Koriv scoffed. "Then why enroll leash species at all?" It was always the same conversation for them, but Lira had never heard it before. That made it new. The Dominion had intentionally admitted humans to demonstrate tolerance. The students had admitted themselves to demonstrate dominance. Juno leaned close. "Ignore the reptiles in formal training mode," she whispered. "They're all mouth until exams. They practice psychological roughness to overcompensate for social insecurity," Lira said. Normal volume. Surgical honesty. Dralthus froze. It was one thing to attack, another to be annotated. "You lab-tested that reply, human?" "No," she answered. Field tested. The tension rippled across the bench metals. Moon gravity nudged harder for a breath. Everyone felt it. Lira recalibrated microscopically, without moving. The room leaned in. A fourth figure approached from behind Sarek. Boots magnet steadying against the floors. Black armor, long, matte, predatory by silhouette alone. An unregistered species had no fittings, no synthetic glamour, but precision wear from true conflict. The claws were folded, but the authority was not concealed. It was Instructor RYTH Tal, 31, Kryllian Tactical Specialist. The only cadets who dared to match Kryllia's raw curriculum without augmentation often sought mentorship from the moon's native instructors. RYTH Tal's calm was different from Lira's. Hers was nature. His was discipline. He set a kettle on the counter and faced the youths. "You boast posture before breakfast," he said. "Unstable habit." Sarek stiffened. "Instructor." "Early rains collapse fastest," our YDH Tower replied, "because they rest on untested floor." Drouthus's tail narrowed. "We meant no disrespect." "You meant spectacle," our YDH Tower corrected. "Intent shapes behavior. Behavior shapes consequence." Juno grinned to Lira. "See? Even professors get tired of their nonsense." Korv watched RYTH Tal's claw gauntlets. "And what consequence do you suggest?" Our YTH Tal smiled. "Micro-expression. The kind used in war rooms to announce inevitability, not humor. You'll calculate it on the training yard." The cafeteria buzzed again, reclaiming sound slowly, like a storm thinking about gathering wind. In Treaties, humans were fragile variables. Here, fragility had to be performed by aliens who required noise to assert it. Ariel Yarrow, 20, a tall avian from Zephyr Basin, glided into line behind Juno, talons clicking lightly on the alloy with an involuntary elegance that was practically aristocratic. She spoke galactic common with lyrical microtones few species could replicate. "Is linguistics your elective battlefield, or will you also spar their Earthborn?" "Both," Juno replied. "And you?" Ariel asked Lira. Lira lifted her cup, a ripple of steam turning briefly sideways under the moon's microgravity tickle. "Applied physics prefers brevity." "Impressively vague," Ariel chirped. "It means she likes results over announcements." Juno translated like a seasoned narrator. Ariel nodded toward the Heraxar cluster. "They bite testing forms." "Fortunately," Lira replied, "I override them." Ariel blinked. "Override rules or override hunters?" Lira looked out the cafeteria window at the dunes swirling in silent pressure like breathing beasts. Assumptions. The line moved. A Dominion maintenance drone whirred above aisle 3, spraying sterilized air, sweeping dust gently without wiping identity from the grains. Lira always wondered if the moon listened or tested. She enjoyed the ambiguity. Earth had raised soldiers through adversity. Kryllia raised them through assumption that adversity would exist. One bred rage, the other bred readiness. The cafeteria doors slid open wider as more cadets arrived, each cohort louder than the last. The sandstorms outside carried no sentiment. That was why Dominion tutors feared it. Fear was personal. The moon was impersonal. That's what made it powerful. Commander Vrax Kef, mentioned only in rumors and political briefings, believed hunts maintained hierarchy. The Cooperation Pact believed hierarchy could be softened through education. The maintenance drone believed nothing. Lira's implant believed nothing. It balanced everything without voicing the calculation aloud. She finished her cup. Juno rose, jacket whisper rustling as she stood. "Training yard." "Seen," Lira said. "Coming." "Already." The bench lifted softly as Lira stood, gravity venting downward in a reverse pull, dust settling instead of rising. When she walked out of the cafeteria, no one mocked. Mockery required repetition. Legends required variety. She was already varied, already myth, already consequence. And she hadn't studied Commander Vrax yet. But he would soon be part of her curriculum. One he never wrote, but would inevitably teach. The transition from morning gossip to regimented discipline at Kryllia 9 was abrupt, like stepping from a heated room into vacuum-cold air. Lira left the cafeteria hours earlier with sand still clinging to her boots, a thin, glittering film she paid no attention to. Kryllia 9 was not interested in ownership of dust. It was interested in ownership of slip-ups. The Heraxar Dominion Military Sciences Academy opened conditioning yard exactly at 0715. The location was a wide crater bowl sunk half a kilometer into the moon's ochre surface. The rim was reinforced with shock pylons to prevent student accidents from cascading into the surrounding desert's ecosystem. The Dominion claimed this place was for controlled hazard training. Controlled was a Dominion adjective. Hazard was Crelia's noun. Both were Lira's verbs. The sky was copper black, smeared by a sunrise that looked more like oxidation than dawn. Crelia 9 star, Vorgan Prime, spat flares that shimmered sideways, an ancient light refracting unpredictably through floating particulate lenses in the upper atmosphere. Crelia 9, shock pylons, Heraxar conditioning yard. Cadets assembled on circle marks engraved into the basalt floor. Each circle had an assigned gravity constant that oscillated between 0.8 g and 2.2 g in randomized cycles, forcing species accustomed to monotonic gravity into a state of perpetual recalculation. Most aliens compensated visibly, knees buckling at spikes, wings flaring at dips, tails dragging when pull intensified. Humans fared better than expected, mostly because their musculature adapted quickly. Lira fared best because she adapted early and invisibly. A voice crackled from the overhead pair array, a tonal modulator that translated Dominion speech into standard cadence all species could parse without cochlear strain. Cohort Theta, 12 shall commence locomotion stability drills. Non-augmented cadets stepped forward. 20 names materialized on the HUD pillar. Only 5 stepped forward. Out of those 5, only 1 looked bored. Weak turnout, Juno whispered beside her. Lira flexed her fingers once. Just diagnostic motion. Normal worlds raise comfort. Crelia raises bottlenecks. Juno exhaled. You and that moon. It's measurable cause and effect, Lira replied. Instructor RYDH Tal stood with arms folded at the edge of the crater, boots pinned magnetically, posture still better behaved than the gravity itself. His long mat coat flapped lazily with no rhythm at all. Nothing on it respected a pattern. Not wind, not intimidation, not chain of command. Sarek, Dralthus, and Korv entered the outer ring with a squad of their scale-broiled friends. The trio had not insulted any treaties today yet, but their faces whispered disappointment that no audience existed to sharpen the cruelty. Commander Vrax did not appear. That was not a relief. It was protocol. Commanders let instructors teach the fundamentals so they could discipline the failures later. A training drone, a sphere skull design nicknamed Apex Alone by students crossing into engineering electives, whirred into the center. It projected a blinking red instruction. Traversed to opposing yard rim without stumbling during cycle flux. Korv rolled his eyes. Simple. Juno snorted under her breath. Famous last word speedrun right there. Lira and Juno stepped forward with the other non-augmented cadets. A Crelia mammalian named Brunetta, an amphibious scholar from Polythere wetlands called Marinquol, and a silicon-born hexape from Shard Colony 3 known as Vekarda. None of them were loud. None of them provoked. They stood forward to observe safety and complete objectives, not to embody spectacle. That meant they were standing against an audience of Dominion youths who breathed showmanship like oxygen. Our YTH Tal snapped a finger. The cycle hit. Gravity dropped to 0.9 g, then punched to 2.2 g, then feathered to 1.3 g, jeered to 1.9 g, stuttered to 0.8 g. 8 transitions in 4.2 seconds. A musical measurement would call it chaos. Dominion farers called it brutality. Lira called it staircase. Marinquol flopped at the second spike, palm slamming. The moon fights dirty. Our YTH Tal crouched beside him as he buckled. Celestial environments exhibit no morality. You exhibit no legs. I slipped. Marin protested. You spilled. Our YTH Tal corrected. Slip implies elegance. You lacked implication. Lira moved on her first step, 2.2 G spike. Everyone except her planted late. Her implant hummed softly, correcting subdermal stabilization before her weight even thought of misbehavior. It was unfair. Unfair with stealth. Stealth-bred winners no one could see coming. Brunetta made it 7 meters, then staggered at 0.8 G dip, knees searching. Vekarda scuttled fast, instant compensating well, but dragged briefly at a 1.9 G trough. Marin was still gasping at the floor, recalculating regret. Juno ran. Human musculature guessed right at first, but guessing was a close relative of tripping. 1 degree away on a bad day. Today was a bad day for relatives. Juno hit a 1.3 G softness wrong and slid into the dust. She clamped fingers into the floor. "Don't you dare laugh," she muttered to the moon. "I laugh at incompetence, not species." Ariel's voice glided overhead. She had arrived just to spectate. "Yours is competence untreated." Juno turned her head under the gravity spike as Lira walked past her. Miss Erased Footsteps is still standing. "Someone refund my biology." "Skill Council is free," Lira said, stopping a breath. "Your ego paid tuition first." Juno groaned. "And you're giving emotional damage in footnotes." Our YTH Tau lifted Marin to sit. "Document her pace. Watch the steps. This moon has no applause floor." Lira traversed 30 meters with no falter. She didn't move fast. Fast cadets try to outrun variable worlds. Mythology outran nothing. It let nothing outrun it. She reached a far rim at 0716:11. Apex Talon blinked green. Objective complete. 0 falls detected. Cora frowned. Drone sensors must have desynced. Dralthus folded arms. "She's walking with Dominion circles. That's not natural." "They're not wrong about natural," Juno said loudly enough to carry. "She's synthetic minimal interface with gravity. The implant does half the flirting." Lira turned from the rim, speaking back to them rather than around them. "Natural is a metric, not a metal." Cora stepped forward impulsively. Impulse was fine. Impulse without stabilizers was not. The ground dipped to 2.1 G instantly. Cora collapsed to a knee. His squad tried to correct stance too late. Too late was the closest cousin of tripping. Our Whitey Tau rose and announced evenly, "Krilia, 9 does not evaluate your species. It evaluates your certainty." Cora hissed, "I was certain." "You were loud." Our Whitey Tau replied, "Certainty survives silence." Noise summoned scrutiny. Lira walked back into the center. Bored was replaced by curiosity now. All eyes followed her feet because no one caught the microsecond compensations. Microseconds held secrets until rumors tried to frame them. She asked one question as she reached the middle circle again. "Can hunters fail faster than kings?" Our YTH Tau smiled wider this time. Legend-pacing smile. "Their timing is usually identical." The drone reset marks. Students recovered posture. Rumors recovered shape. The moon recovered nothing. It never lost balance in the first place. Lira looked up at the sky as another gravity cycle simmered harmlessly around her. She inhaled, sand lifting lazily sideways for everyone else, but settling downward for her. Physics rewarded owners of variables, not contestants of theatrics. She stepped back to circle mark 12, implant humming soft, and waited for the next test like a storm allowing her preface. No one struck first today, because first strikes without witnesses turn cadets into stories. Stories, unlike proof, did not violate pacts. They violated assumptions. Pressure had a temperature on Krilia 9, not hot, not cold. Just there, a density the mind learned away like atmosphere. The conditioning yard left bruises on egos and exhaustion on bones. But the hierarchy of regiments survived because the world refused to decorate its lessons. Lira Ashford understood that the Dominion believed leverage was louder than truth. She also knew the difference between loud leverage and quiet vector control, the kind that carried no headline until it landed. After the flux drills, Instructor RYTH Tau dismissed non-augmented cadets to recovery prep. Dominion med staff rolled med vats into the recess alcoves for standard oxygen bleed cleansing. Most species needed it to shake the microgravity nausea. Lira reported to one alcove alone. Alone was normal. Alone after scrutiny was procedural curiosity, like a cell about be annotated. The Academy's inertia fall archive system recorded every slip, misstep, or medical collapse. Dominion VA clerks used archive falls as evidence for rank assignment and disciplinary hearings. Krillian instructors used it for analytics and survival triage. Lira studied its structure privately, line by logical line, like a lawyer reading physics. Inertia Fall Archive System. Inertia Fall Archive. A Dominion clerk, Archivist Kelvorin, 27, entered with a slim pad tucked under one arm. His uniform was press sharp, angles harder than diplomacy should allow, but softer than war fittings. His voice was formal, neutral, lacking the slick disdain common in student mockery. The Dominion assigned Kelvorin to archival processing because neutrality avoided rumor migration. Kelvorin. He looked at Lira's boots, then the lack of tremor, then her posture. Krylia displays a high flux injury rate, he said. Your file is empty. I didn't fall, Lira replied. You should have, Kelvorin countered. Blood pressure variance readouts flagged every species at least twice. No shock circle stays at constant 1.0 G for any longer than 0.04 seconds. Lira tapped the bench once, dust settling downward instead of rising. I correct early. How? The implant. Kelvorin placed a pad gently on the counter. Gently meant noticed. Is that cooperation or compensation? Cooperation requires consent, she said. Compensation requires noise. The line was clear. Kelvorin's pupils narrowed, not to intimidate, to verify. Explain your process without parables. Lira inhaled, words sharpened like training weapons. Gravity dampens before weight conflicts. Weight conflict before instinct adapts. Instinct adapts before panic disrupts pattern. I block the conflict before it completes the cycle. You pre-sign your biomechanics to Krylia? He asked. The moon accepts no signatures, she said. Only milestones. Juno Callahan limped into the threshold of the alcove with a rival maintenance, sphere drone hovering behind her, an engineering assistant tag Gravorb Model 12, a mass-carrying servant drone used for mark resetting and cleaning. It beeped softly in non-Dominion coded tones, like a skull offended by rules none of them wrote. You telling him your secret? Juno asked, sliding onto bench. The floor spiked once to 1.7 G at her crash sit. She corrected late, slumping into the dust again. Kelvorin watched Juno collapse without judgment. I archive falls. I do not archive loud observations. Our YDH Tal entered the alcove now. His boots were magnet-locked for discipline, not spectacle. He looked at Lira, then Kelvorin, then Juno. Didn't expect chapter footnotes during yard flux, Juno muttered, slumping upward again at a 1.3 G uplift. Our YTH Tal folded arms. Archive operations implied observation, but he disliked spectacle that summoned Commander Vraxketh, the Dominion enforcer, who preferred consequences delivered like signatures. Commander Vrax let instructors handle the fundamentals, so he could discipline the narrative later. Commander Vraxketh. Marin Quoll fell 4 times. Kelvorin whispered. Drauthis fell twice. Brunetta fell thrice. Vec Arda slipped once. Every fall logged. Why is Lira's constant empty? Our YTH Tal smirked side toward Lira. Because emptiness is not evidence of fragility. Kelvorin tapped the pad's interface once. Mark absence violates Dominion intake forms. Our YTH Tal looked at Lira. Lira looked at Sand. Sand listened to nothing. And yet, the instructor said, Dominion exams fear instability. Kelvorin frowned, not anger. Timing. You permit testing edges, but not abductions of records. Double thesis contradiction, right there, instructor. Our YTH Tal raised a brow. You're a clerk, not a champion. One margin away, said Kelvorin. Lira stood and stepped to the archive vent floor at the center. The floor corrected weight instinctively without oscillation, but oscillation struck sideways in the vent, because the moon always reclaimed its free-form tests. Her boots did not tremor. Permit me to test without Baroque dialect, she said. Kelvorin sighed. Regulation state trial intersections rarely resolve well for treaty-bound species. Lira flexed fingers, a robotic minimal gesture. Code for diagnostic interest, not violence. Violence arrived later in Dominion hearings, if the variable was loud or visible. She whispered calmly, Hunters fail faster than kings because they posture before breakfast. Our YTH Tal chuckled, not comedy, inevitability tone. Demo mode accepted, Cadet. Flux resets next week. Kelvorin lifted the pad. The algorithm listed planned disciplinary citations. Cadet Lira Ashford exhibited flux gravity mastery, exceeding pattern standard tolerance. Kelvorin looked at her boots again as she exited the recovery alcove, 23 seconds before Commander Vraxketh would have arrived to discipline his leverage publicly. As Lira stepped out, the archive floor droned green. Objective: no public fallout before taxonomy is processed. The Dominion believes hunts bend hierarchies. Juno said. The moon bends nothing. Lira turned once. Dust drifted sideways at 1.7 G spike around her rim exit stance. Everyone else drifted late. Variables can't bend charts without witnesses. Juno grinned weakly and limped out after her. You becoming a file or a myth, Lira? Neither. Then what? A recurrence no archive can trace. Kelvorin whispered to himself as Lira crossed the far rim again, boots balanced. Addendum. Some cadets rewrite physics. Others rewrite rumors. This one rewrote scrutiny. The archive floor blinked no, accepting her milestone quietly. Records could be erased. Stories could not. The Dominion had planned to hunt her publicly next week. The moon hunted nothing. It left the variables to hang themselves or balance early. She balanced early. Already curriculum. Already myth. Crelia 9's twilight arrived with no fanfare. The star did not sink so much as retreat, folding its glare behind the drifting silica veils that blanketed the upper sky. If dawn resembled oxidation, dusk resembled embers buried under glass. The Dominion clock struck 1800 before anyone felt it. Time on Crelia was a ruler, not a storyteller. Evening analysis sessions were mandatory for combat physics students. The Inertia Fall archive system had spent the day ingesting instant recordings, stability scores, and biometric telemetry. For most cadets, the archive was an examiner with perfect memory and no mercy. For the Dominion staff, the archive was a pipe of control. For our YTH Tau, it was a mirror. For Lira, it was useful. That was all the meaning she assigned it. Inertia Fall archive system. Vorgan expanse. Gravitic recalibration vents. The analytics chamber was circular, suspended on gravlock pistons to counter the moon's micro-shear tremors. If the Dominion believed circles conveyed unity, the moon believed circles conveyed targets. The chamber was silent, except for UI chatter from floating holopads preparing readouts. Silence, like pressure, was non-negotiable. Juno Callahan arrived first, rubbing a bruise on her forearm, her first trophy from Crelia's indifference. Brunetta marched in precisely at step 14 of her cohort to claim second seating assignment. Marin Quoll entered 7 seconds late, dragging a towel for unintentional emphasis. Vec Arda clicked in, Hex legs compensating unconsciously well. Only 30 cadets total made evening analytics. The others were still recalculating dignity in recovery. Lira took circle seat 8, benches shifting gently under subdermal gravity correction as she sat. The implant hummed faintly, not loud enough to perform existence, but loud enough to reassure its owner. Commander Vraxketh entered 12 minutes later. Protocol laid on purpose, wanting all cadets already self-sorted into posture. The matte black of his armor drank the room's spare light, edges clean enough to imply a blade, without drawing one. His silence was not her silence. His silence wanted to be heard. Commander Vraxketh. He spoke without raising his voice. Raising voices summon gravity spikes, and gravity spikes archive failure. Milestones first, Vrax said, pacing the room slowly. Witnesses afterward. Juno leaned sideways to Brunetta and whispered, I told you he talks like a lawsuit. Brunetta murmured back in Crelian local, because superiority requires citations. Commander Vrax heard neither phrase. He recorded them in his head, not his pad. He stopped at Lira. You finished the traverse twice today, he said. No falls, no medical spikes, no pressure variance. Lira met his gaze neutrally. Infrastructure compensated before biology intervened. His pupils thinned. Infrastructure caret is class augment. You filed none. I walked without augment, she said. PA registers nothing but motion. Motions register nothing but milestones reached. Gate is unremarkable. Vrax crouched slightly, studying her boots, then her breathing. Dominion enforcers crouched before sentencing, not curiosity. It unnerved Marinquol, who hissed from Alcove 3. She doesn't flinch. Illegal trait. Emotional control is not illegal. Lira answered, eyes still on Vrax. Only unsanctioned retaliation is. That reply sent 14 cadets recoiling softly in seats at the subtle Dominion G-flux spike overhead. Subtle spikes were tolerated because they were unintentional. Unintentional meant Dominion plausible deniability. Plausible deniability was a Dominion's favorite pet. Corellia did not keep pets. She kept errors. Brunetta folded arms, leaning toward Vrax. What metric defines a breach, Commander? Commander Vrax straightened. Visibility. Juno groaned. So senseless bullying is legal if unfilmed? Legal if unfound, Vrax answered. Marin blinked. Found things bleed. Commander Vrax looked at Marinquol. You fell to 1.3 G. That is bleeding academically. Lira exhaled slowly. It was a measured exhale, not a performance exhale. No one phaneroted oxygen pressure lines like repetition, so she avoided the pattern. Juno clamped forearm grips into alloy bench 14 to balance 1.7 G spike again. You think exams demand bravery, but this moon only demands footing. Your Dominion needs posters for that. Ours needs muscle and restraint. Lira turned Juno once toward Dominion Tabletop 12. Restraint is not muscle. Restraint permits muscle to deploy at correct vector, not incorrect headline. The chamber listened again, because veterans listened when no one narrated. No one narrated Lira. She permitted implication. Commander Vrax crossed the room toward the archive pillar at center, with boots magnet bolting against the floor once. Replay the traverse. The archive pillar hummed and blinked a replay, a single red detection on Juno's first collapse, then 5 more on amphibious flailing, core of second knee buckling spike. Not on Lira. The recordings ended early because no repetition of pattern meant no way to algorithmically find duplicates. Lira Ashford became a data wilderness, no algorithm fence without evidence. She made physics sick, but not for theatrics, for plausibility. Plausibility was a Dominion's nemesis when unseen. Kelvoran appeared in archival chamber 14 seconds later, a slim pad humming. Command addendum. Cadet Lira outpaced pattern survival expectations. No falls logged. Regulatory anomaly flag for review at 0600 next week. The room reacted. Juno stood unassisted this time. Stood was a milestone, not stagger. 0600 next week? She asked Kelvoran. Kel murmured, exams. Exams test knowledge, Juno said. This moon tests assumption. Lira stepped off circle mark 8 gently. Assumptions are single-form theories until disproven. Data is multiform truth until witness. Commander Vrax folded arms precisely at 0600 the next week. Protocols rarely bend. But protocols can't anchor legends. They anchor archives. That's how Lira planned it. Vrax faced Lira as she crossed the crater rim for a second session that week. Where are your sensors tuned, Earthborn? Lira answered, dust settling downward rather than upward under 1.7 G flux around her perimeter. Not repetitive flux, not Dominion reading. Timing is rarely first strike, but always last proof. Commander Vrax glared, not out of intimidation, out of inability to sight. Unable to sight meant defeated academically first. Then the moon reclaimed silence as Lira crossed the far rim again. Boots stable, evidence absent, myth undefeated because repetition never found a place to land.